Good morning. We're broadcasting live here from the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. Here in Nevada City Winery, it's the home of our media lounge this year. And Wild and Scenic has been going on for 16 years. And the producer of Wild and Scenic Film Fest is Circle, South Yuba River Citizens League, which is an extraordinary nonprofit. We have over 700 volunteers that are part of Circle and also that just help make this festival happen. One of which is our guest this morning is Chuck Jaffee. He's been a juror of the Wild and Scenic Film Fest for years now, and you might read some of Chuck's film reviews in the Union, which is a local paper here. And then, the Oscars are coming up next month, and you can get Chuck's predictions on those.
38 years I've been doing that.
38 years. So first, welcome, Chuck. I don't know if have we ever had you here in the Media Lounge before?
This is the first time.
It's an inaugural event right now this morning. How many films, by the way, are screening at Wild and Scenic this year?
It's about 120.
Did you watch all 120 films?
You know, there are probably 15 films I haven't seen for one reason or another.
Wow, but that's amazing. So you've watched over 100 films.
There are a few people who have seen hundreds of films, but yes, I've seen a lot of films.
That's right, because you have, not only are the films that are being screened here, but then you have to watch certain films that are being selected.
Yeah, what's submitted, what's selected.
That is, so how did you get dialed into this in the first place, Chuck?
Well, you know, I lived in the Bay Area for quite a while, and there's plenty of things to plug into. It wasn't until we moved here 14 years ago that I just felt that community thing. It was here, and this was one of the things that my wife and I do. It's just a neat thing to do.
What is it about that? Can you tell us just about the essence and the magic and the power of these films, especially connected with Wild and Scenic, that keeps you inspired and keeps, that's a huge commitment, for example, to be part of the jury and to see that many films. But there is something special about this festival and the films that are part of it.
Well, I'll say it this way, and I could say it many ways. I'm lucky enough to get to talk to a lot of these filmmakers. And think about it. These are people who are not going to make any money and who are giving, 2 years of their lives, maybe more, to some passionate thing. And I get to, is that going to be an interesting person? Probably.
Probably.
You know, and that's what it's like with the festival. It has purpose, it has passion, it has inspiration. Documentaries, I would actually say, are a way to go for film watching.
That's so true. And also, in some of my conversations with filmmakers yesterday, a good trend that I see happening right now is now with feature films. Even there are organizations that are partnering with feature films to create social movement campaigns that tie in with those. And I think, the documentaries have a huge influence on that and the action that's a part of that.
I see a lot of commercial films, and if I had to point people in a direction for being satisfied a high percentage of the time and feel like you're putting your time in for a good reason, look for the documentaries.
Look for the documentaries. How many jurors are there as part of Wild and Scenic?
It's not always the same, but it's typically 7.
What is the process in selecting the films, and what is the process also when selecting the films that are, because there are films that receive awards here, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
Right. So separate from the jury, a subset of the 120 films are selected to be put before the jury. And then just to get us started, we do a summary rating of all the pictures, not a ranking, just a rating by certain reasons. But then we quickly leave that behind. It's just a way of organizing what is a very lively conversation. It's amazing every year the different flavors of perspective. And nobody's been hospitalized yet, but it really works out. We've always come to a consensus.
Yeah.
And we try to march through the categories, but then you don't quite get there, and you go back and you cross over, and something is a contender and it falls away and bubbles up another place. It's always an interesting process.
What are the categories for the Wild and Scenic Film Fest?
So the juried categories that we do, there are 10 of them, or 10 awards. There's the best of the festival. There is the most inspiring adventure. Best in theme, so there's a different theme every year, and this year it's groundswell, and that can mean
We've been
different
talking
things.
about groundswell a
Okay,
lot, Chuck,
yeah.
and it does have different meanings
It
for
does.
people.
There's the Activism Award, and this is, of course, a key feature. There may be an overlap to the other categories, but we like to highlight that. And then it gets, there's a short award. I really like that because this is a different way to apply your passion. And so to achieve something in a short form, I'm glad we have an award for that.
Right.
And then there are 2 jury awards, so it's not a category, but we want to make sure it's seen. And 3 honorable mentions, which kind of says there are a lot of good films, and we want to give more awards. And so it's not the 4th grade, everybody gets an award. It's we want to give awards because there are so many that deserve it.
Right. And and I should also mention that then the best of the fest.
Yeah, that's
right.
so.
Is that Sunday night and Monday night? Is that, I believe it's
Separate from the festival per se, they're putting it in the theaters. They'll only find out this afternoon what those
Okay.
films are, and create whatever they can manage for a time slot out of not just those 10 films. There's the People's Award film that's not a jury
which
award.
you vote for.
Right, and there's the Kids Jury Award, and there's the Filmmaker Award. So I'm not sure what they'll put in in the special event.
Right. So what have been some of the highlights this year?
Well, I think
I know that's a tough
we need
question,
another
but-
whole show, and especially
Right.
because there are so many different kinds of films.
So many kinds of films. So let's talk about just overall, and then we can talk about what's screening later today.
Okay. Well, so one thing that's neat at a festival is when you get something quirky, or like it's not necessarily what you'd expect in a commercial location, like rodents of unusual
I
size.
saw the photo, Chuck, and I was like, what is going on there? It's intense. It's, yeah,
20-foot
rodents.
rat-like things called nutria. But this is a complex film. It's not only about whether you should kill this invasive species.
Is that like in Costa Rica?
No, although it is around the world.
Oh, okay.
There were 25 million of these creatures in Louisiana,
Wow.
and they instituted a bounty. You bring me the tail, we'll give you $5. And people who, by the way, don't have other ways to make a living will kill 100, 200 of these at a time. They're everywhere. And by the way, they're eating up that protective border between the water, the Gulf
Right.
of Mexico, and New Orleans, Katrina. They eat every root in sight. So they are truly an invasive species.
Right. And that film, by the way, is screening today. It's during the session. It's at the Miners Foundry. And that is part of the block. It's starting at 1:30.
Yeah, and the film that it plays with is a quirky film also that has a substantive quality and is neat for anybody who cares about what's going on.
Another film you were talking about, and this is also screening this afternoon, is Bled Road.
So now we go in the adventure direction. This is about 15% of the festival. But one of the neat things that's happened over the years is that adventure films have taken on more of that, how is it connected to the environment and the world way. And this does that very well. 2 impressive women athletes, bicyclists, one from America, one from Vietnam. You have a cross culture. Take a ride on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. Okay, this is the key route during the Vietnam War for our enemy. And she's going to discover the place where her father was shot down, and going through these places with literally hundreds of craters from the bombs we dropped. And Vietnam has moved on,
Right.
and it's a very embracing film. It's a big adventure film because they're doing tough stuff. And there's this personal quality of her getting closure with her father, who she never really knew.
Right.
So,
Right. And then another film screening today, and I can't remember the title, but it's around a climber who was like, you mentioned he was doing even ascents in his 90s. Which is
it's
amazing.
called Dirtbag. If anybody who does climbing may be familiar with this kind of person who says, I live to climb, I don't really care what I eat or who sees me do what, I just climb. And you might not even like this guy, but he is pure dirtbag. And while other people were climbing Mount Everest, and that's fine, he would take those 6 months to climb 6 new first ascents. And just the way he lived his life, including sleeping on the ground when he was in his late 80s, and harassing people to take him to another climbing opportunity. It's a neat picture, and well done.
Dirtbag, that's also showing this afternoon. So Chuck, you've been a juror for many years with Wild and Scenic. How has this, being connected to Wild and Scenic Film Festival, how has that influenced your life on a personal level, like any of these films? And if I'm assuming it has, you know, and just how you show up in the world.
Well, very much so. On a smaller reflection, it's like here I am in my 60s and I'm in college. I have this well-tuned college course where I get to know about these subjects
Right.
and meet these people. And then that spills over into the fact that whether it's local with Sierra Harvest, for instance, who's doing these marvelous things, it makes you want to be part of it more.
Right.
And the biggest thing facing us today, climate change and all the fingers of affect that has, it makes you get off your seat and say, not only that you must, but you can accomplish things. Yeah.
Exactly. There's nothing impossible. That's one of the things we learn here.
Yeah.
Through these films and the guests that I've been speaking with over the last couple of days and the last several years. So just 2 more questions. I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, how do you create the time to watch 120 films? Like, what does that look like? I mean, I get access to the films. That's a lot to... Are you doing this, like, do you have a social life, Chuck? Are you just, like, sequestered in your... Does you have an agreement with your wife? You're like, for the next couple months, you will not see me.
Well, probably you should be interviewing her about this. But if you just put aside the fact that I don't mind getting up at 5 or going to sleep at 1 and doing that, I am pretty much accessible to anything my wife says. We are doing this. But if we are not doing that, and I have other outlets like writing and such, but I'll go to the movies every time.
Watching the movies. All right, and so the theme is groundswell this year with Wild and Scenic. What does that mean to you on a personal level, especially given how wild this year has been?
Well, I'm an eclectic person, and so I don't think one thing about it. I'll pick one thing. There's a film called Call of the Forest, and it's this wonderful scientist lady.
She's a tree lady.
She's a tree lady, and I even refer to her as a lady because she has that way about her.
Yeah.
And she soothes you into caring. But I consider that a groundswell picture because she basically says, you know, if everybody would plant 1 tree every year for 6 years, we would solve global warming. And that, to me, is a groundswell. And there are many other versions of it.
I saw that film last night. I loved it, and the film kicks off in Japan and talking about forest bathing. So just something to think about, how important the trees are. Thank you so much, Chuck, for everything you're doing and being part of Wild and Scenic Film Festival. I know it's a lot of work, but it's certainly necessary, and I know all the filmmakers appreciate your time and effort as well, and energy and commitment to this festival and to Circle as well.
More than a pleasure.
I'm Elisa Parker, and we are in, guess day 4 or
4 out of 5.
4 out of 5 for Wild and Scenic Film Festival. 16 years here. We're based in the Sierras in Nevada City, California, and also Grass Valley, California. Good to be with you, and we'll be right back.